Hello, Guardians. Welcome back to Tower Casuals, the Destiny podcast. I am one of your hosts, Corey Derrigan. Alongside me, as always, is a very tired Josh Finney.
Oh my god, I'm still under the weather, everybody. I'm sure you can hear it in my voice.
I can't believe you keep showing up. I mean, I'm happy, but
we are in the middle of like the golden era of Destiny right now. So I don't want to miss anything. The expansion is so big that we're still talking about things 3 weeks later. I have a raid recap pod along with Joe and I providing our definitive Tower Casuals raid rankings.
Yeah.
For the entire Light and Dark saga. There was some controversy in there.
Oh, spicy. I can't wait to listen.
Yeah, spoiler alert. I had Scourge of the Past at like number 10. Joe had it in his top 5.
What? Mm-hmm. I liked Scourge of the Past. I really did, but
did too, and then I remembered every other raid that came after, and I was like, damn, I actually really love all of these raids. It was very difficult after the raid layers for me to rank them.
Did you separate D1 raids from the D2 counterparts?
No, we if there's a D2 version, we just used that as the definitive version of the raid.
Smart. Smart. It would have got really complicated, probably.
Yeah, I didn't want to go into that. Wrath was very difficult to rank because, technically speaking, so Joe's never ran it, and I have never quote unquote gotten a clear. I have gotten to Final Stand on Axis though multiple times, so I'm considering that as a clear. I have seen every mechanic and every fight, and I can rank it appropriately, I feel. But yeah, that's it. There will be no more raid rankings.
No more.
For Light and Dark. Whatever the next raid is, unless it's if they do redo a Wrath of the Machine, there might be some rankings, but I don't think that things would drastically change.
Yeah, no, I don't.
At this point, like, it's going to be really hard to crack that top 3.
Yeah. And in my opinion, unless they trained, I love Wrath of the Machine, I really do, but unless they like completely changed entire sections of that raid, it would not make the top 3.
No, I mean, because the top 3, so Joe and I both had the same top 3. I'll leave you guys to figure out what order we put them in, but Last Wish, Salvation's Edge, and Vow of the Disciple were our top 3. Both of us together. It's really hard to crack that top 3 right now, because you're bumping out one of the 3 most like mechanic heavy raids that we've ever gotten.
Yeah,
and 3 of the probably the 3 most unique boss fights we've ever had too. It's going to be really hard to beat those.
Yeah.
So good luck, but yeah, I think I had Wrath at 5 on my list, behind Kingsfall, and Kingsfall mainly gets the nod because I've run it a million times.
Yeah, and it's really good.
It is really good, but like having run Oryx a bunch during Pantheon, it's very clear to me like I like Kingsfall overall, but holy shit, that is a slog of a raid. That is a very long raid. It may be the longest raid in the franchise.
Really?
Well, so you have the entire opening the portal to begin with encounter. You have the long jumping puzzle with the ships. You have totems. You have War Priest. You have Golgi. You have another jumping puzzle. You have Daughters. And then you have Oryx finally. With a non-skilled group, that is a long raid.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I've just run it so many times. I could probably run it with my eyes closed. Like
encounters wise, it's the longest raid by technical encounters that we have.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah, it's just like, oh my god, like that and Last Wish are just very long raids. But enough complaining about the raids. We have Destiny to talk about, Corey.
Yeah, Destiny, Josh.
Oh my god. So fair spoiler warning here for everybody. It's been a couple weeks since the expansion came out. It's been 16 days, as a matter of fact, since it came out. The moratorium on me talking about post-campaign stuff is over. If y'all haven't done the post-campaign stuff, you can turn it off here. And you can skip ahead. I'm not even kidding, because I'm going to spoil the fuck out of everything.
Yeah.
Oh boy, where do we want to start with this? Because there's 4 different plot lines we have to talk about here, actually.
Just pick one, Josh, and we'll go.
All right, let's start with Kaido and Zavala.
Yeah, let's do that one.
So in the course of finishing your subclasses up and doing the Destined Heroes exotic quest to ultimately get Ergo Sum, you have to undertake some missions wherein you play alongside friendly Cabal. And Keitel is trying to like get Zavala to be a warrior again and this and that, and basically is like, I'll mold you into a lightless warrior myself. And I'm like, ooh, Keitel.
Ooh.
Keitel, like, man,
She's getting
he they're gonna go back and maybe fucking on New Tora bottle.
Yeah, I feel like there's
Like
a rhino.
Mars.
I feel like there's a space rhino sex swing somewhere, Josh.
It's called the Relic. It's the Relic on Mars, I'm telling you. It is just wild to be hearing this, but it's like it's two character moments that are so, their interactions throughout that whole quest are so earned though.
Yeah.
Like it is a perfect, because it's obviously it's not the end of Keitel's story,
Right.
but it kind of feels like this is probably where we're leaving her for a little while, because she's played such an instrumental part in the seasons and even in the expansions. She has been a part of all 3 expansions since she came into the game.
Yeah.
Her fleet was there in the Witch Queen attacking the Throne World, and that's actually when we interfered. That's what kicks off Risen. Which runs parallel. She's obviously a huge part of Neomuna. She sends her fleet to Neomuna to help us. And then, obviously she has a big role to play in the final events of the Final Shape. It's very cool to see these interactions with her and Zavala, though. Like, she sees Zavala as an equal. Like, Zavala is lamenting the loss of his light throughout these 2 quests, and she's basically like, shut the fuck up. I don't have the light, and look at me. I'm awesome. Like, I love whenever she starts quoting like the Cabal creed, like we eat the mountains, we drink the seas, we are Cabal. Like, I've had to hear her speech so many times in Excision, like running it multiple times over the last 2 weeks, and I just like it so perfectly encapsulates this character and her philosophy, but also like in who Zavala is going to have to become without his light.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's a better character in universe to teach him how to be a lightless warrior than Keitel. But like on top of that, you've also got him learning how to use stasis and strand.
Right.
So obviously not the end for our dear commander, but rather a different path. And I'm going to say it now, I'm actually pretty okay if they don't use him for the rest of these episodes for this year.
Yeah.
Because it seems like they're setting it up for like this season is Saint, Osiris, and Failsafe. Next episode seems like it's going to be Mithrax, Ido, and Crow. And then the last one, it sounds like right now it's going to be Eris. Savathun's going to be a part of it. I would imagine Imaru and Drifter are probably there also, given the cutscene that we see at the end of the campaign.
Right.
And I think that's like, it's really important that we get these character moments, because just alongside that, we shift focus to Mithrax. And with Mithrax, we actually leave the Pale Heart. The Cabal missions take place inside of there and like around Zavala's home and this and that. We actually leave and go back to Europa with Mithrax. We go back to Reese Reborn to hunt his mother's killer.
Yeah, that was cool. That was a cool mission.
That was very cool that we did that with him. And then I love that they just dropped the brig on him at the end.
Oh, I know. That was cool.
It was so great.
It was great. I thought I loved that story. I love Mithrax's story, man. There's so many threads good. And there's so many like just you just question why he's not like a terrible person.
Yeah, and I really love that his whole philosophy is just that the light provides.
Yeah.
And that like he doesn't know if it's always the best idea, and like, he's gotten questioned about it, by Aramis in the past, like, how can you follow the Great Machine still? And he's like, I mean, we're all gonna die at some point, basically, is his whole philosophy.
Yeah.
Like, I might as well die alongside the Great Machine and alongside the Warriors of Light. and I think it sets in motion some interesting things for him. Um, but his story kind of ties into another one that we're going to talk about here at the end. You've got Savathun's story going on also, that she's mucking around inside the Pale Heart. She helps us get the class items in Dual Destiny, basically says, like, let's defy both Witness and Traveler together to get those class items.
Yeah.
I love the dialogue in this mission. If you haven't done it yet, I encourage everyone to go do Dual Destiny. It's one of the most unique missions they've ever done.
Yeah.
The twist at the end is so delicious, though.
Yeah.
And choosing to either have mercy or kill your companion is hilarious. I killed Nerd. I'm gonna be straight up honest. I killed Nerd, but I chose not to crush his ghost.
Yeah.
I want to say it was it Joe? I want to say it was maybe Joe Asis ran one with Fox. Somebody ran it with Fox, and Fox crushed their ghost without a second hesitation, and like kept doing it.
That's funny.
It may have been him and Nerd. I'm not sure, but when you do it, Savathun kills you.
Yeah.
And is like, oh, I knew you. Like, oh, you really are a little killer, aren't you?
Mitch killed me, but he didn't crush my ghost.
Yeah, I didn't. I did whip out that heavy trace rifle though and instantly melt.
Yeah. That's an awesome mission, by the way. Like, I love how it's just two people. You know, I love like you said, the dialogue is really unique and cool and strange, and it's a cool mission. So I highly recommend doing it. I got the Spirit of Armamentarium on my first roll.
I have gotten like 7 rolls, and none of them are the one that I want yet.
Yeah, look, I like Armamentarium a lot, but I don't know. I mean,
everybody should want one with Star Eater being one of yours.
Yeah,
just for DPS purposes.
Yeah,
I'm hoping that, fingers crossed, I get some more rolls this week. I was running around the Pale Heart today because I was finishing up my Kvastov quest.
Ooh.
Oh my god, dude, it was so bugged for me. Beyond just the motes of light being glitched, I also had my encryption bits messed up. And I thought I was missing like 3 more because the count was off. And I popped one, and all of a sudden it's like, boom, you're done. Okay, I'm not going to question it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I haven't finished the Kvastov quest yet. I'm working on it, but I haven't finished it. I would like to, though, just because I probably will this weekend.
Yeah, it's pretty grindy because you get the legendary one, and then you have to do a separate hunt to get I think getting the exotic is significantly easier than getting the legendary.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. I like that it all ties back to the regional chess and to the motes of light ultimately. I think the most intriguing of the post-campaign content, though, hands down, comes from Micah 10.
Oh yeah.
For those who have never read the lore book, your friend Micah Abram, I really recommend you go read it. Those are letters that Micah wrote as a child when they were living at the Eventide facilities on Europa. The penguins you find that were hidden are actually Micah Abrams.
Ooh.
That are hidden on Europa. And it establishes that Micah's dads were scientists for the Bray Corporation, and that is where a young Micah met Cade for the first time. Cade, the biggest revelation that comes out of these Lost Ghost quests, there's a few revelations. The biggest one is that Cade used to be the bodyguard of Maya Sundaresh.
Yeah.
And it is very strongly implied that, because Micah knows their past.
Yeah.
And if you're wondering why I'm saying they, it is because Micah was a boy, transitioned to being a female when they went into an Exo's body.
Mm-hmm.
But they went looking for their past on Europa and found it. They're one of the very few Guardians that knows the past, but even as a child, they were already receiving visions of the Traveler. And I would say that this pretty firmly establishes Micah as potentially the next speaker.
Interesting.
Just the way that, well, so the lore for Micah goes that when they used to patrol the Cosmodrome and stuff, they were cloaked in ghosts that were still looking for their guardians. That's how the Six Coyotes came to be formed.
Mm-hmm.
And that one of those ghosts was at one point Glint. Glint was one of the ghosts back in the day. And I think that draws an interesting parallel, because now that puts Micah up in some rarefied company. If they were getting Visions of the Traveler even then, that puts them alongside the Guardian, Cade, Crow. It puts them up in that rarefied air. But I think the bigger implication here is that Micah is likely who Cade thinks of when Cade thinks about Ace.
Mm-hmm.
That Micah is who Cade thinks of as Ace. And I think that's really important for us to understand, because that adds another fascinating layer to Cade's story. And it should be noted that all the Lost Ghost quests take place before the final encounter with the Witness, chronologically.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was really interesting how they reuse these old story missions and these old strikes and things like that to tell a new story. That's how content should be reused. It's doing it with new voice lines, new enemy types, and I think it's really unique that we go back to the pyramid on the moon, we go back to the pyramid on Europa, we go back to some of the heist battlegrounds, like we go back to, of course we're going back to the Devil's Lair, and like I said, we were going to circle back around to Mithrax's story. House Salvation is mentioned when you're doing the quest inside Devil's Lair.
Yeah.
That we interrupted an arms deal between House Dusk, which is the Fallen that are under Fickrell's command, and House Salvation, which is the remnants of Aramis's house.
Mm-hmm.
So I would assume, based on the cutscenes that we see at the end of the campaign, that Aramis never made it back to Reese. That she was intercepted by Fickrell along the way.
Yeah.
And is now having to work for Fickrell.
Yeah.
Because it shows that Spider is keeping tabs on both.
Yeah.
And that Crow is trying to pick up the trail. That would also reason for being like the emotional crux of Mithrax and Ido's storylines. So very interested to see what they do there. There are just some fascinating tidbits and storylines that are laid bare here. Micah, I feel, is going to become very important, not in episodes necessarily, but specifically when we get to Frontiers. I think Micah becomes very important as a main character.
Yeah.
Micah kind of feels like what they wanted Hawthorne to be, but as a guardian.
Yeah.
Like Hawthorne, we've all joked about how Hawthorne's been a nothing character since the Red War, but like really, she's been a nothing character since the Red War. Even the other planetary vendors got story beats at some point with the seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And in the lore and stuff like that. Hawthorne's barely even mentioned in the lore at this point. It feels like Hawthorne and Nimbus are just gonna kind of exist where they do,
Mm-hmm.
and be forgotten about. Like Elsie is even to that point, right? Like
Yeah.
Elsie really hasn't gotten anything to do since Beyond Light. She appears in a few lore pieces, and that's it.
Yeah.
I think that Frontiers is an interesting opportunity to bring some of these characters in, like some of these characters who have explored the wild, right? Like if we're going to reclaim, theoretically reclaim planets that the Witness took from us, which is what I think Frontiers is based in.
Mm-hmm.
It would make sense to have characters like, maybe Hawthorne is a part of it. Maybe, Micah is going to have to probably be like the main vendor of it. It would make sense for somebody like Sloane to be a part of it, for these characters that have kind of been thrown by the wayside to have this opportunity to explore the wilds with us.
Yeah.
I think there's some really interesting storytelling that can be done here, but it's as we kind of like transition out of the epilogue of the final shape and into what episodes are. I'm still not totally convinced about the delivery method of episodes. And I know that I'm saying this a week and a half into Act 1. And I do think that is something that should be kept in mind, is I'm saying this so early, and that I reserve the right to change my mind about this down the line. I'm trying not to be too judgmental because we got so much given to us with the final shape. Like,
Mhm.
I'm just finishing my Kvastov quest now. I
Yeah.
did GM Excision this week. Like, they are still dropping things in the base game. And there are still secrets to uncover in the base game unless you like 100%ed everything already, right?
Right.
So when I go look at episodes, people are like, oh, episodes, it's being time gated and this and that. Like, man, if you've gotten through all the stuff in the final shape, kudos to you, because 99.9% of us have not.
Right.
Like, GMs haven't even opened yet. So
Yeah.
I don't know, like, what do you feel about these epilogue quests? I
I
guess I should say, because I think I like these to get the abilities more than I did hunting some of the prismatic chests down.
Oh yeah, I think these are much better. I think they're well paced. I think they tell interesting stories. They don't last too long. Um and they're just interesting, right? I definitely think the Micah 10 story with Cade is incredibly interesting. I actually went and looked some more stuff up after that to see if there was anything else, you know, to read about it. And, I loved it. I think they're great. I almost wish this is what the episodes would be. you
That I
know?
kind of found myself thinking the same thing, honestly.
Yeah.
But I do like that because I mean, you have to have enemy factions to focus on for a coherent story.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important that these take place before Cade sacrifices himself because it allows Cade and Micah to have some of that closure.
Yeah.
We see that there is still a quest with Micah that we haven't been able to do yet. So I do think that that'll be one final mission.
Yeah.
Whether they give it to us next week or the week after or whatever. Like, we know there's an update coming on Tuesday with the Master Raid and with GMs. I can't help but think that maybe there'll be a final mission, a final Lost Ghost mission, which would be
Yeah.
really cool. Um, Kind of like a final send off from Cade in a way.
Hmm.
But I like how this does transition into episodes. I just right now I'm just sitting here kind of wondering like what is different about episodes versus seasons.
Right.
This just feels like a longer, bigger season. That being said, I love a good scavenging mini game, and I'm actually really enjoying picking up all the plants that I see
Yeah.
in these missions. I love that I'm having like a whole garden on the helm. I just want to know what happened to my fish, though. I need to know that my fish were humanely cared for.
Right.
So, I guess as we go into the seasonal content, I find the seasonal content to be pretty fun. I'm not going to lie. The basic activity breach executable is interesting. It's just, kind of your standard arena mode. You can hit one of the pistons, planetary pistons, pick up a whole bunch of plants and stuff. There's little research quests to do during them too, which is cool. The master version of it drops just insane loot.
Oh,
Johnny
really?
and I ran 3 of these yesterday and I think I got 5 red borders in 3 master runs.
Jeez.
And it match makes it too with no darkness zones.
Oh, nice.
So highly encourage anybody who's of level, go do that if you're trying to get some of the seasonal loot. I think the cooler mission though is the Enigma Protocol mission, where you go inside the Vex net. This is really cool because they literally lift part of the mission directly from Expunge. It is literally an entire Expunge level. But we talk about reusing assets, and there you go.
Hmm.
Like, it's not pretty, but they reuse a lot of assets from that. They use some of the stuff from Vexcalibur. They reuse the Sparrow Race portion of one of the time trial things on Neomuna. Like, they reuse all of this, and I think it's a really good way to reuse assets, but still be able to do a new activity. Um, that is just such a fascinating activity to me. I really like it. I like trying to figure out how to extend my time to the max and things like that. There is good loot to drop. We're gonna get into, I think this next week we're gonna dive into a lot of the weapons of both the expansion and the season. But I find myself really digging. I like some of the Pale Heart weapons. I think they're real hit and miss, like all destination weapons. The Call might be the best weapon in the game right now.
That's the sidearm, right?
Yeah, it's the Rocket Strand sidearm. Genuinely might be the best in the entire series. Right now, like Indebted Kindness, still great, but
Mm-hmm.
man, the Call absolutely shreds. That thing's a fucking tank. It's been power crept to all hell.
Mm.
I love it. It was the most used weapon during the contest raid mode.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
it was the most used. But that, in terms of the legendary weapons, I'm not like super impressed with a lot of them on Pale Heart, and I think that's because like we got some good world drops. The playlist weapons I'm really digging right now, and then the seasonal weapons. I think the entire seasonal suite so far is great. The
I,
seasonal and the reprised dawn weapons are just outstanding.
I really like the scout rifle from the seasonal arsenal.
The
I forget
the
what it's
cowboy
called.
rifle,
Yeah,
yeah, that thing is dirty.
yeah. I
It
got it.
can roll with heel clip incandescent on it.
Yeah, I got incandescent on it.
It's one that Johnny and I are rushing to try and craft this thing.
Yeah.
I think he can craft it. I'm one or two patterns off, but that's awesome. I actually really like the auto rifle is good, especially if you're building into stasis or prismatic. I think it's really good.
Hmm.
The um, grenade launcher is really fun, especially because like it's a stasis breach loader, but it like rapid fires the grenades out,
Yeah.
and it creates the vex pools because that's the origin trait.
Right.
So really like all of that. The caster sword is actually really fun. I found myself enjoying that, and of course, we all know how much I love the Season of Dawn weapons. They brought back my all-time favorite scout rifle in it with brand new perks. They brought back my favorite sidearm ever as a strand two burst sidearm,
Which sidearm is that?
breach light.
Oh, right. Yeah. I have breach light.
Yep, I kept mine from way back in the day, and I still really like it. I'm thrilled that that's back. Line in the Sand is available starting this week for the rewards track. That's the linear fusion from that season. And we know later on this season, we're getting Martyr's Retribution back, which was the breech loaded grenade launcher that everybody liked so much.
Yeah.
So, really, really good, strong reprised arsenal, strong seasonal arsenal so far. We know there's a few more weapons, including a rocket sidearm to come from that. Um, and I believe that's a solar one. I think that's coming in Act 2. I believe in Act 2, that's when it's coming. Um, this season pass change is a little funky to me. I like it because I think it really rewards you if this is like your main game, it really rewards you, I feel.
Yeah.
There's now 200 levels instead of 100, but levels 100 through 150 and then 150 through 200 unlock with their respective acts,
Hmm.
which I think also is a way to like bring players back in if like they blow through all the content and are like, okay, I'm going to step back for a little while until there's more story or more content, and then you come back in like 2 weeks when the next act starts, and here you go, here's a bunch of stuff. Like you can level past 100, you just can't get all those rewards until they become unlocked.
Right.
Which is a choice, but I'm not upset or angry about it, I don't think.
Yeah. I don't know. I get it, but also like I think you could be rewarding players for keeping on playing. I don't know. I don't know. I'm of two minds, I guess. So
Yeah. I like this. I like what I really like is that there's a second helmet you can earn at the end of the 200 levels. There's a second helmet ornament. And I
ooh,
enjoy that because I think it's a universal ornament. I want to see more rewards like that. You should be rewarded with fancy shit for making it all the way to 200 levels.
yeah. Oh yeah.
And I think for people who play this game a lot, like that's not uncommon to hit that. And if episodes are gonna be 18 weeks long, which is about what it looks like. On average, they're going to be 16, 18 weeks long. I don't think there's any reason to not hit that.
Yeah.
I know that some weeks are going to be easier than others, but they're doubling the amount of challenges we get every season. You've got we're going to complain about Pathfinder here in a minute because I got a bone to pick with this fucking thing.
Oh boy.
But I think that the challenges reward good XP. I think that I'm just finding myself chilling and playing the game, and all of a sudden I look down and I'm like, oh shit, I went up 8 levels on reset day just because I'm completing challenges and doing story missions.
Yeah.
Like I bounty prepped, but I didn't bounty prep super hard, and I'm sitting at like level 72, and I don't feel like I'm grinding very hard at all.
Yeah.
But I'm just like mindlessly doing Pathfinder objectives while I'm going through Pale Heart is like giving me levels upon levels right there.
Right.
So I don't know. I like the expanded rewards track. I think that it was sorely needed, but I want to see how it shakes out. But I think a little bit more substance probably is needed if you're going to expand it to 200 levels.
Yeah.
Maybe throw a couple extra deep sight harmonizers in there. I do like that they are throwing some transmog bucks in. I do like that.
Yes.
And they're universal ones, so you can use them on any class. But I just got questions to know like who came up with the reward system here.
I would just looked at the helmet that you get at 200 for the Titan, at least the Chroma Cloak crest. That is
I think it's great.
That is a one shiny helmet. It's cool. I like how it has like these like weird eyes that kind of stick out from the helmet.
Yeah, I think it looks good on every class. So
yeah.
The other thing I wanted to address is I want to talk about Pathfinder for a minute, because I think that Pathfinder is both really good and really shit, to put it lightly. In Pale Heart, Pathfinder feels incredible. It feels so good. It makes me actively want to go patrol and go do basic objectives. Like if you just essentially start with the final objective that you're going to have, and then you can just fast travel to where all the little mini bosses are, which are nothing to kill, by the way. You can easily blow through a Pathfinder in like 30 minutes. Easily. There's no reason that every week you shouldn't be resetting that one like 2-3 times. No reason at all.
Yeah.
However, the Rituals one feels awful, and is awful in my opinion.
Yeah, it's not
great.
No.
And I don't think that like the objectives themselves necessarily are bad. I think that they're poorly worded. Like you'll have some that are like defeat opponents or enemies by making them volatile, defeat targets after they've been jolted, defeat targets with Scorch. And it's real hard to get some of those done.
Right.
I think depending on how you play. So that's a bit aggravating, but then you'll get one that's like, go get 6 sniper kills in Crucible. And I know that the whole idea is that you can build it to however you want, but if you run into a roadblock, like you're going to be sitting there just like, it encourages unoptimized play, yeah. I think is my problem. Like it's the same problem that we had with bounties, just magnified.
Yeah.
Because everyone starts every week with the same Pathfinder. Now, the only cool thing about the Crucible ones is, and I'm sure this is a bug that they're going to fix, as of tonight, you can still go in and get your Crucible ones done in private matches. Anything that can be done in Crucible can be done in private games.
All right.
Which is a choice.
That's,
It should be noted, you cannot do Gambit private matches for the Gambit ones.
That's,
It is 100% a bug, and I don't know if they can fix that. I hope they don't, personally.
It's a choice to do one and not the other. I don't know. That's weird. It's strange, but
it's a choice. I don't think that I don't think that Pathfinder is really fleshed out for ritual activities. I think it's going to have to be expanded. If this is the first iteration, fine. I think you're going to need, and this is where it's going to sound a little shitty. I think you're going to need to do separate Pathfinders for Strikes, Crucible, and Gambit eventually.
Yeah, I bet they do that. I wonder if they're just it's one of those things where they're just like, oh well, let's see how it does here, and then we'll
It's
adjust.
weird because I like the approach of being able to play however you want, but you are at certain points you will be pigeonholed.
Yeah.
I ran into one last week where literally all when I had triple objectives, all three of them were at two different times, Gambit and then Crucible. And it was like they were like they weren't hard Crucible ones, they were just annoying ones with how the ammo economy works now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the fascination is with snipers on these Pathfinders, but like even on Pale Heart, I'm like, oh my god! Like if I see get 50 sniper kills, I'm like, fuck that. Fuck that. That is so long. So I don't know. I have opinions to say the least. Um I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts on Pathfinder, Corey? Ah, he stepped away. I did not realize that he had a message here. I did not have that window up and I had something else. I guess moving on. I want to talk about this Kvastov quest for a little bit. It is probably the last exotic quest or second to last exotic quest that most people will do inside Pale Heart. Um, I don't think it's particularly hard. There's just a lot of scavenger hunting going on. In true Destiny 1 fashion, it involves finding all the regional chests inside the Pale Heart. It involves beating all nine unique overthrow bosses, 3 per region, to get the Motes of Light, finding all of the Traveler statues, and then you also have to find the remaining encryption bits inside of the cyst activities. Um, I don't think this is bad, but it has been bugged in 2 different instances for me already. The first was, of course, the Motes of Light bug that just about everybody got hit with. Somehow I avoided that one. There's another one that I haven't seen talked about much, if at all, that I ran into, which is where my encryption bits were not all. Oh, so here we go. I'm actually going to read this directly from the TWAB. Kvastov issues. The Motes of Light. We've already addressed that one. Encryption bits. Players should ensure they have collected all regional chests in the Pale Heart in addition to searching all the rubble piles and the cyst activities. We are aware of a separate issue where the triumphs for opening the region chests and searching the rubble piles can be unintentionally completed before meeting the intended requirements. Players are advised to rerun all of the cyst activities and make sure every rubble pile has been searched. Once all of the intended chests and rubble piles have been interacted with, players will be rewarded with the lost encryption code regardless of how many bits have appeared in their inventory. So they have addressed this. Mine was glitching. It was showing that I was missing 3 still, and I was really
Mm-hmm.
only missing 1. And it drove me nuts because I ran all 6 cysts this afternoon trying to figure out which one I was missing.
Wow.
Yeah, thinking I was missing 3 and I didn't have rubble piles showing up anywhere. And then I hit 1 and all of a sudden the legendary encryption bit pops up.
Right.
So
That's
it is very aggravating. It is very annoying. The other thing regarding the Motes of Light, of course, collect and place all visions of the Traveler, defeat all overthrow bosses in each area. We additionally recommend players who only need to defeat the Taken Servitor boss in the Blooming attempt to kill it a couple of times. Including returning to orbit between runs, and there is an issue where the triumphs that track which overthrow bosses have been killed are not functioning correctly. You should not be using those triumphs as confirmation that you have successfully defeated all unique bosses. It is a gigantic pain. This quest is so bugged. There are so many bugs to this particular quest that it's truly a Destiny 1 gun that we're trying to get.
Josh taking a swig, everybody. Josh taking a swig. A long swig.
That's either that or I'm going to keep coughing. I'm going to have a cough attack. I didn't realize you had stepped away, and I had asked if you had any other thoughts on Pathfinder while I was sitting there ranting about it.
Oh, it's okay. I there was a loud noise in our laundry room, and I had to go check it out because I don't like loud noises.
Yes, that's
So
not ideal.
don't be alarmed, everybody. It was just a broom falling over, but still. Yeah, I mean, like you said, on the Pale Heart, it's great. Like, I definitely can find my way through, and as somebody who definitely doesn't play as much as you, I found myself leveling it up at least twice every week, 3 times one week, and it's just like, yeah, it's awesome. But like going to other places and like you said, it pigeonholes you pretty hard, and it kind of sucks when you're not doing the Pale Heart, going through the Pale Heart. So I don't have anything else really different than you to say, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. I think that there are ways to improve it. And I don't know if breaking it out into separate sections is really the way. I think they're trying to encourage you to, hey, maybe you see that you have an easy objective somewhere else, and like you should be trying to work on multiple things at once. But really all this is doing is just making me not want to care about the Crucible ones at all. And I can't believe I'm going to say this. It makes me want to go play Gambit instead, because I can knock out like 4 or 5 Gambit challenges in a match or two.
Right.
With whatever loadout I'm running. So that makes me kind of want to go do it there. I love the ones where you can just complete them in any activity. I think those are actually the best. I did one Nightfall and got like 5 challenges done, but it didn't form a line straight to my thing. So now I have to go do either Crucible or Gambit going forward. So lucky me. I said this a couple weeks ago. I don't know if I said it here on the show or if I was saying it in a private chat. I actually would really like to see a Pathfinder once an Iron Banner comes around, as a way to maybe be the way that you can get guaranteed the shader.
Yeah.
Or the emblem or something like that. I even think like guaranteeing like a masterworked version of like that rotation's gun, possibly. I know that Saladin has his own reward track and whatnot, but I can't help but feel that like this would be a way to earn extra XP, maybe earn extra Iron Banner rep by doing challenges. Like, there are things you can do here. I think the only activity that probably should be excluded from Pathfinder is going to be trials, just because like you don't want to be forced into running something specific in trials.
Right.
And I think we can all agree that trials needs better rewards, or better reward structure at least. But I don't think Pathfinder is going to be the way to do it. I think Pathfinder can be useful for something like Banner, though, that everyone is going to interact with and play with.
Yeah.
But that's how you're going to do your destinations going forward. Cool. I'm fine with that in the new expansions. Totally cool with that. I think the fact that you can get 2 guaranteed Ergo sums every week is really cool.
Yeah.
I would like it if you had the choice between an Ergo sum and the class item once you have the class item unlocked.
Yeah.
I think being able to get 2 of those like right off the bat every week would be really cool.
Yeah, I agree.
But it doesn't feel great running around and opening up chests for like 30 minutes. I'm not complaining, because there's worse things you can do. Throw on a podcast and go do it. But I think for those people who have like, and this is kind of where I came down with Dual Destiny in the first place. I forget who said it, but someone was like, you probably don't need to grind out the class items and like multiple rolls on them if all you're doing is playing in the Strikes playlist and patrolling Nessus. Like, the grinding for multiple class items, just like I think grinding for multiple swords is really for those of us who are trying to optimize builds to go do, master level content and raids and things like that.
Right.
That's where I think you're going to be grinding those. I think most people are going to be like, oh, hey, I got a pretty decent roll on this. Like, okay, cool. I don't think I need to kill myself for the ideal combo. Meanwhile, you got people like me over here ripping their hair out because they have 9 class items and none with Star Eaters yet. Of course, the benefit of being a hunter means I can just throw on Star Eaters, but I want them as part of the class item. So,
yeah. Why have them on the normal item when you can have them on your class item, Josh?
Right, like you can draw from both, because God, there's so many good combos with these stupid class items now. Very, very excited for some of the hunter combos out there, but I think while we're talking like just kind of general like quality of life stuff, I think Prismatic's in a really, really good place. We had a question about this a couple weeks ago. Like, was there anything you would add to Prismatic? And I think the only thing I would add is one more grenade choice for each element on each class.
Yeah, I would add, because Titans.
The hunter grenades are dog shit.
Yeah,
so
I would consider adding some sort of like real support item, whether it's I wouldn't go so far as being like a bubble for a Titan or anything, right? But like the Solar Titan has healing grenades, and that might help in a lot of situations.
Well, and that's kind of where I'm going with this, is that like the other classes have ways to survive, and like the hunters, the only way that you regen health and stuff is by melee go invisible. And I don't think that that's necessarily bad, but they're basically turning hunters into mini titans, and that's not a very fun playstyle for a lot of us.
Yeah.
And I know I was like, oh, the grenades are dog shit. Like, yeah, like that's why a lot of folks are using because they're using the grapple instead of actual grenades. Because our choices are the swarm grenades, the magnetic grenades for void, the little arc bolt grenades for arc, and dusk fields. And like, so you're basically running dusk field or you're running grapple.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody is running the other three unless they have a Pathfinder challenge for it, essentially.
Right.
With melee, I think melee is in a fine place for Hunter Prismatic, but I don't think any of the kits are necessarily bad. I think you just need you might have to play a very specific play style right now, and I'm sure that things are going to get changed over time.
Yeah.
And that there will be more options eventually. I don't think we're ever going to get more supers added. Nor do I think we should. I think there's benefits still to running the individual classes, which is what they clearly want to keep.
Yeah. Yeah. I just I think especially the Titan one feels especially aggressive. And maybe I just feel that way because I've been playing support Bubble Titan for so long that like playing an aggressive build feels really aggressive, and it's like, oh man, I feel like I'm flying around here instead of just kind of like hanging out back here trying to save everybody. But I do feel like that I'm missing some sort of support item.
Yeah.
Even if it's small.
Is an interesting case.
I do love Prismatic though.
Prismatic is so good.
So
it's so good.
Yeah.
I've taken it off a couple of times, and that is mainly in things where I need the survivability factor.
Yeah.
Where I've run like straight void, or I've run straight solar, so that I can go invis on dodge, or so that I can throw down a healing nade. But I'm trying not to run it too much. There's just too much value in Prismatic, I think.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be like, oh, Bungie's kind of forcing us into it, but they're kind of forcing us into it.
Yeah. Yeah, I it's funny. I actually had Destiny downloaded on my PS5 for some reason. I don't remember why I did. I think it automatically downloaded when Lightfall was free on PlayStation Plus at some point, and I just, and I loaded in. I'm like, I wonder how it feels on PlayStation, but I don't have the final shape on PlayStation. So like it automatically switched me off of Prismatic, and I'm like, this is really weird not playing on Prismatic. This is, I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, I don't think that Prismatic is bad at all. I think the people who are out like, oh, my Prismatic kit sucks, like maybe you just need to make a better build.
Yeah.
Question mark. Maybe you need to like learn how to play the game a little bit differently. It does encourage a different play style than we've been encouraged with in the past, right?
Yeah.
And
I like
are going to go through their
styles.
ebbs and flows. They're gonna get buffs. They're gonna get nerfs. Like,
yeah.
Yes, right now, if you run a hunter, there is a big emphasis on melee builds. There just is. But that's like kind of the nature of it at this point. And I do think that that's going to change. But goddamn, it's been 2 weeks, guys. Like, let's take a deep breath. Go get those new stasis fragments from Elsie. Like, go get the new stasis fragments. Play around on stasis a little bit.
Go outside.
Go touch grass. I mean, I'll give you all the same advice. Like, if you're constantly always upset about things, or like, oh, nothing's working the way that I want it to, like, maybe it's a you problem and you just need to take a big break. Like, there is nothing wrong with taking a break from an online game like this. We've preached it for years, and I'll tell you something, man. Taking as much time off as I did during Wish, and then the Into the Light streams really, really got me back on board. And I think for the last couple months, they've been killing it.
Mm-hmm.
I think ever since we started getting those Into the Light streams in mid-March, they have just been crushing it.
Yeah.
It's been 3 straight months of good content. I mean, just as Into the Light was wearing out its welcome, boom, here's the final shape. Boom, here's the post content. Here's maybe the best raid we've ever done. Here's, all these other activities to do here. Here's the Kvastov quest. Here's the Microsm quest, which the quests that you do to get Microsm are awesome versions of these story missions, with Berserkers from Scourge of the Past thrown in there, with glyph reading thrown in there, with, little twists on who can use the Aegis and who can go through the portals. Like, it is very unique, and I really, really love it. And then, you still have episodic content on top of that. Like, we've now reached a point where, like, we complain about the episodic content because it feels like we're back to square one with it. But at the same time, it's like, there's way worse things that we could be dealing with right now than, episodes are a little boring to start off with. For an 18-week episode, they're a little boring in the first week. Oh, no.
Yeah, I mean, plus they're still trying to figure out the episode model instead of, like, they're transitioning out of the seasonal model into an episode model. Like, it's going to take a couple episodes, I think, for them to really find some sort of footing, right? I mean, if this was the 3rd episode, maybe we could be like, okay, let's figure it out. But this is, like you said, 2 weeks in. It's fine. Everybody calm down. It's fine.
Calm down. It's fine. Speaking of calm down, it's fine. I want to head to the TWAB.
The TWAB.
Because there's not a lot here in the TWAB this week, but we read the only other thing that was, like, super important besides this. But we'll talk about the raid and dungeon update here. So let's talk about this for a minute. They say the final shape brought a few changes to raid and dungeon experience. First, the difficulty tiers and power level caps were reworked, altering the difficulty for many power-enabled activities. At the same time, surges were added to raids, offering a damage boost for certain damage types on a weekly rotation. We've seen a lot of discussion and different numbers posted for how this impacts the raid and dungeon experience. So we wanted to give a quick clarification on the net change for incoming and outgoing damage in raids and dungeons in the final shape. So outgoing damage is -5 for the power cap, -33% in raids, and +2% in dungeons. Outgoing with the surge was -15% in raids, +28% in dungeons. Incoming damage +32% in raids, +17% in dungeons, and incoming when it's at +15 power cap, +3 damage in raids, -8 in dungeons. These numbers are specifically for regular combatants. More difficult combatants scale a little differently. Raids and dungeons had different settings previously, however, being similar to each other, we've changed to use the same settings in the final shape to be more consistent. Outgoing damage is capped at -5. The power-enabled match-made activity, standard and advanced, players will continue to increase defensive effectiveness beyond the target power. This means players will continue to reduce incoming damage up to +15 in standard and +10 in advanced. With that context in mind, we've been listening to the feedback around how surges have been impacting player build choice, and we're going to make a change. The upcoming change: we have decided to remove surges from raids and dungeons in next week's update, as well as adjust tuning so you'll perform as if you had them across the board. This means the damage bonus will now be applied to all subclass damage types, including kinetic, by default. This change will make outgoing damage in dungeons higher and reduce the difference in raids compared to before the final shape. It does so while removing barriers to build crafting. We'll continue to monitor feedback and see how this update plays out for everyone. I think people were making way too big of a deal out of surges. I'm going to be totally honest.
Yeah.
I expressed this opinion earlier in our Discord. And I think Dado sums it up really nicely. Dado basically said, people try out a different raid loadout, challenge impossible. My whole thing was, and this is a point that was made by, I think it was Nerd in our Discord, saying that, well, surges and stuff like that are fine for something like Pantheon, but it shouldn't be for normal raids. And there's some folks who think that it's gatekeeping. I don't think it's gatekeeping at all for you to, hey, if you want to maximize your damage output, play a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Like I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think that should be restricted to just master content either, before anybody brings that up.
It's an RPG. It's an RPG. Like, you gotta, if you want,
it's an RPG that has become way more RPG lately.
Yeah,
like it is an FPS RPG, and I'm sorry if you don't like the role playing part of it and like having to maximize your build. Like, min-maxing your build is part of an RPG these days. It's part of it's part of Souls likes. It's part of a lot of them. Like, Destiny is a very unique shooter in that it does things that other games don't when it comes to stuff like this.
Right.
And I don't know. I don't know what the big deal is about it. I'm not sad to see it go, but I don't think it needed to go. I am a big fan of them keeping the -5 power delta, though. I think that like, my whole thing is, I think that raids are supposed to be challenging. Raids are the hardest content in the game. They are the pinnacle content. They should be a challenge.
Yes.
It should not be to the point where it was pre-final shape, where you could kind of moonwalk through any raid and just have like 2, maybe 3 people doing mechanics, and everyone else can stand around, ad clearing. That's not what a raid is. That's why I like Salvation's Edge so much.
Everybody's doing something.
Yeah, everyone's doing something different. So,
yeah, that raid, I've been watching some videos on it the last couple days, and man, that raid looks just so much fun. It looks incredible.
I think it's going to be really good. I am a big fan of the raid. I think without surges, it makes it easier now that everything is buffed up to what it was when it was Solar Surge. I think Microsm is the big winner here because that's a kinetic heavy. And we've never had a kinetic surge before. Yeah. So that getting a 25% damage boost in endgame content is wild when it's already super powerful.
Right.
So I look forward to using Microsm a lot personally. I really love the weapon. It might be my favorite weapon of the final shape, personally. And a lot of people love Ergosum. Not taking anything away from that. Microsm is awesome, though. And you can't exactly use a sword against a witness. So,
sure you can.
You definitely cannot. I watched somebody attempt it. You cannot do it. I do think that it's a lot of fun, though. I think that surges would have added something unique, but them pulling that, okay, fine, whatever. At least they gave us the damage boost. I didn't expect to see that. Applying the surge boost to just everything and saying, fuck it, here you go. Like, okay, maybe we went too far in one direction. Like, okay, we'll make it to where you're still taking a lot of damage, but you're going to deal a lot more damage as a result.
Right.
I like that. So, I don't know. You have any other thoughts on this?
Nope. Nothing you already haven't said.
Okay.
You're all right there, Josh? You look concerned for a second.
I had a text come in that I was trying to read.
Oh.
I gotta answer that here in a minute, but yeah, there's not a lot else. There's really nothing else here on the Schwab. There was a interview posted on ArtStation about the concept art of the final shape. Some really, really cool concept art in there. Some cool witness designs that they chose not to go with, and I can't help but wonder what it would have looked like if they had gone with some of these more horror-esque images of the witness.
Some of them look really good.
Some of them look very good. There was also that cutscene that came out, the unfinished cutscene of what the resurrection of Ghost was originally supposed to look like. And it's confirmed that it was pre-delay is when it was in the game. The delay is what allowed them to rework the ending, and that's when they settled on Cade sacrificing himself. That was very interesting. If you guys haven't seen it, it was up on YouTube. It got pulled off. I believe it was originally part of the ArtStation article, actually. But it was very neat when they did it. It showed the Guardian using the power of light and dark to bring Ghost back to life.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I wonder how that I wonder how that would have changed things. But then you would have had to
Um,
resolve the Cade thing.
yeah, so that's what I keep coming back to is I think they had problems justifying how do you leave Cade in the game at that point, because
Mhm.
Cade has a dialogue line, and I'm not saying that they couldn't have added it afterwards, because I'm fairly certain they added all the Cade dialogue in the delay
Mhm.
for that cutscene. There is a line that he has um, in the final radio message you listen to where he basically says before the battle happens, he doesn't know where to go. He doesn't think he can ever go back to the tower. He feels like he's kind of tied to the traveler. Like
Mhm.
that's the moment that like if you haven't deduced it by then, like it's not actually Cade. Like
Mhm.
Cade is a manifestation of your like he's there but he's not there.
Yeah.
He exists within the traveler because the traveler is shaped the pale heart is shaped by the guardian's memories,
Uh-huh.
and that is what ultimately allows Cade to exist. I think that this was really smart so that they aren't just, oh, Cade's just trapped here forever.
Right.
Because then it's like, well, okay, so we went through all this to bring him back, and basically we can't use him ever again in a story beat. And I think they realized that rather than be written into a corner, he can give you the future that you and your ghost deserve that him and Sundance couldn't have.
Yeah. Which
And
I
I
think was
think
more powerful,
oh,
right?
very powerful. It's one of the most powerful moments in the entire series, I would argue.
Yeah.
Which it's funny you can say that like three different times in that ending, I think.
Yeah.
Um, or at least through the course of the campaign, you can say that. I think that we talk about powerful moments in the campaign, and there's Cade's vision from the Traveler is the first one that comes to mind. Um, Zavala losing Tarj,
Mhm.
and then I mean, of course, the Zavala speech is powerful in a different way, like a very Avengers Lord of the Rings moment.
Yeah.
Charging against the impossible odds and this and that. And then that motherfucker doesn't even show up during the battle. He leaves Saint and Thrax to do it, basically.
Right.
Come on, buddy. I needed to see the Vanguard out there with us.
I wanted to see Zavala use some stasis.
Dude, I wanted to see that. I wanted to see Ikora throwing a needle storm out.
Yeah.
I needed Cade and Crow back to back shooting things.
Yeah.
Um,
It would have been
but I mean,
cool.
minor gripes aside, like I think that the whole arc of Cade in this game. Cade is ultimately, aside from Ghost, Cade is the most important character in this expansion.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Which is funny because you don't really get that vibe at first. And you can probably I think you have to do a lot of the post campaign content. You have to do Last Hunt. You have to do the Micah 10 quests. You have to obviously see Excision to understand that like so much of this is really because of Cade coming back allowed them to break the creative shackles that they had
Yeah.
in a way that I don't think any of us thought would happen. I remember a year ago when we saw the teaser for the first time last May, and we were like, Cade is back. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, what is going on? Like, how on earth is Cade back? Like, we saw the shattered ace in his hands, and people noted the glowing eyes and everything. And I think we all knew at that point he was probably a ghost,
Right.
essentially.
Right.
And it was just like it was always these questions of how does Cade come back, and like the quick interactions between him and Crow, like that Cade. We read the lore piece last week about or release week off of Still Hunt about how Cade briefly thinks about murdering Crow in his sleep, and then he
Hmm.
sees Glint and immediately feels shame that he even considered it.
Yeah.
It's just like, hey, you killed me in another life, but you're not that person anymore. I'm not that person. Ultron played his hand better than I did. It's over. Let's move on. Cade being the most rational of the Vanguard in this story is actually really shocking
Yeah.
because it's a very different Cade than we've known. And I think part of that has to do with his resurrection. Like, he clearly struggles with it the whole time.
Yeah. I mean, the last time we see Cade, like before he dies, he's riding that giant mechanical thing down and waving at Petra, right? Like he's riding a
An
bucking
all-time
bronco.
great moment in the series.
Yeah, awesome moment. But
Pressing all the red buttons.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like, yeah, he still has his moments, but even from the first moment that we interact with him, you could even go as far as the final cutscene of Wish
yeah,
when Crow goes through the portal and Cade picks him up.
Mm-hmm.
And we encounter him when he's playing the harmonica. He's playing the Destiny 1 tower theme.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "Oh, you're not Crow," and turns around the fire and sees that it's you.
Mm-hmm.
And just instantly, it's like the band is back together.
Mm-hmm.
We really only get Goofy Cade one time, and that's during the Wild Hunt.
Yeah.
Which I feel like that was a giant love letter to the fans,
Mm-hmm.
because that was clearly planned from the beginning. We knew about the Golden Gun Sniper back in August. That really feels like that was meant to be like the cap off quest for Cade.
Mm-hmm.
But also, like, man, it flows so much better narratively that they decided, okay, we know we're potentially, and I think the debate had to have been, are we leaving something on the table here by killing Cade off? Like, we brought Nathan Fillion back just to kill him off again.
Yeah,
But
but they're not really killing him though. They're like, you know what I mean? Like it's not the same as the last time.
it's not, but I do think it's a little hard to bring back such a beloved character and voice actor and then
Mm-hmm.
immediately they're gone again. Now, don't get
Yeah.
me wrong, they definitely got their money's worth out of this,
Yeah.
by having Cade narrate so much stuff. But
Yeah.
I'll admit,
This
like, I really wrestled with it.
Yeah, to me, like, and I know hunters are like a lot closer. Most hunters are probably closer to Cade than the rest of the Guardians, right? Like,
Yeah,
everybody loves Cade, but the hunters have a special connection, right? And so it probably is harder for the hunters to wrestle with that. But to me, this felt like during that whole thing with, Forsaken was great, but that was like, I don't, I feel like what they did with Cade in the final shape was the proper goodbye, right?
yeah, I
And
would agree with that.
not just we're gonna theme a whole thing around his murder, and he's in like one cutscene or whatever, right? And we don't really get to say goodbye to him. So I felt like this was a proper goodbye to Cade.
This was that, like, as someone who's been a hunter main for 10 years, it was really bittersweet. But I love that there's just that little twist in it, that the dialogue is just barely different if you play
Mm-hmm.
as a hunter.
Yeah, and I think that's great. I think that's awesome. I think that's a nice touch.
Like, both in that and in the campaign, when they're like, "Oh, you got your two best hunters on the case." Well, if you play as a hunter, it's the three best hunters on the
Mm-hmm.
case.
Yeah.
And things like that they add these little moments that I felt like we kind of had lost in Destiny, that we hadn't seen since the Forsaken days. If you played as an Awoken and went to the Dreaming City, they'd call you brother or sister.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought that was so cool.
Yeah.
And I always like those interactions. Well, I've played as an Exo all this time. So as a hunter Exo, seeing Cade die again, it kind of brings those emotions up. Like, I think they really nailed it by making Cade and Ghost kind of the center of the emotional arc. And I would argue, like, you can put Zavala and Crow in there. I think Ikora is really the only one that we don't get a big emotional beat from
Yeah.
of the core cast. And I think it continues to be just a shortcoming of the narrative team. Like, one of their only big shortcomings is just like, what the fuck are you guys doing with Ikora these days?
I mean, what are they doing with Ikora anyway? I mean, I feel like even like putting her front and center in the Witch Queen, they still like turned around and put Eris in there, right? Like I just feel like Ikora is just like the third wheel the entire time and doesn't ever get anything, which, maybe it feels like I don't care because they've done such a great job with Zavala over the last couple years and bringing Cade
Yeah.
back and evolving Crow, but like it's like Ikora's here too. Like I I do think, and like even everybody had their big moment with Cade in like a cutscene, and Ikora's was just in like a campfire. I'm holding my gun while I'm watching them hug type thing,
Yeah.
exchanging an awkward, you know, in-engine hug or whatever, right? And so I don't know. I agree that Ikora has not had much of an evolution over the course of the last
It's
decade.
been kind of a bummer, because I think that she's so badass in the
Mm-hmm.
lore that we're like, man, I really really wish that we could just see this normally, like see her cool self normally.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're not gonna get that. And if you were going to do it, this was the expansion to do it in, when you got to pull out all the stops.
Yeah.
Instead, I think the coolest scene with her is in Cade's vision of the city falling.
Yeah.
You know, when it's
When that Vex is
Ikora
chasing
and
her.
this and that. I did love that, you know, in Cade's vision, Cade sees Crow as, you know, the new Vanguard. He sees him in Glint. And then he
Mm-hmm.
sees another vision of the Traveler shows him another vision of the city falling.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Ikora fighting in the street and, you know, having to summon the Nova Bomb and whatnot. And like, it's like, oh, this is so cool. And then you just never get it again.
Yeah.
That was a bummer to me, especially when she's the Vanguard member. Well, now Crow, obviously, but she was the one of the three that still had her light for the final battle.
Yeah.
Man, and it's a bummer because I think that like this is the most character development we've gotten with Zavala since Haunted, obviously.
Yeah.
With Zavala's therapy sessions. And then with, I mean, Cade, it's he slots in so naturally, it's like he never left.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that they used this card now instead of saving it, because it makes sense for Cade to be there at the end. Like they said it in the announcement last year, like we couldn't imagine doing the final shape without Cade being here.
Right.
And it's just so well done. It's so good that all my qualms about Ikora like kind of fall away, because what they do with him and the journey they take Zavala on, it's like Zavala. I've seen people get upset about Zavala's arc. And the more I sit on it, I'm actually kind of happy for it, because Zavala is scared and it causes him to be reckless.
Yeah.
Like, this is the first time we've ever, not the first time, but it's the first time since the Red War that we've actually seen this guy scared.
Yeah.
The Red War was because we lost our home and he was like, we're going to retake it. We're retaking it, even without the light. Here, he wants to act recklessly because he's terrified. Like, everything is about to end.
Mm-hmm.
And he feels like he has just continuously failed everybody. But him ultimately losing Targe, he pays the ultimate price here.
Yeah.
And it's not until then that Zavala snaps out of it.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, late. I'm gonna fight to the end. You know, it's all up to the Guardian now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I also wonder if anything was supposed to be different with Zavala if Lance Reddick was still around.
I don't think so. I think they would have still done it, even with Lance. I would argue it would have been more powerful with Lance.
Yeah.
Part of me almost wonder, and I've wondered this all out on the show, and I'll continue to wonder it, if they had this all written and they really only brought Nathan back after Zavala or after Lance passed.
Yeah.
Because I like to think that they already had it lined up, because, I mean, it takes a long time to record all this dialogue, and this was originally supposed to be out in February. My guess would be that they already had it planned, but that maybe they expanded Cade's role in, like, the post-campaign afterwards.
Yeah.
It would not shock me if Still Hunt was turned into an entire quest after that happened, to be like, okay, this is like our voice right now. We need to make the most of it.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Let's hit some questions up. Then we're gonna do a quick lore corner and get out of here.
Questions.
We have a couple questions tonight. All right. Green Crayons writes in and asks, is it 1 through 9 or 2 through 10 in Dual Destiny? Is this the new Oryx in back or front of room? I feel like we're at that point. Yeah, it is the new front or back for Oryx. But also that first clock, 100%, I would say it's easier to read as 1 through 9. When it's the full clock, you should be reading it as a clock.
Yeah.
I don't think that those are two hard distinctions to make at all.
Yeah.
I tried calling it like it was a normal clock, and it actually was confusing me more.
Yeah.
In that first room. So yeah, no, first room is 1 through 9, and then the second room is 1 through 12.
Yeah, I agree.
Or 12 through 11, 12 all the way around, 12 clockwise.
Yeah.
And it also has become startling to know how many people don't know how to read an analog clock.
They don't teach it in school anymore, man.
I heard, and it floored me.
They don't teach you how to read an analog clock, and they don't teach you cursive anymore, man. And then they make you do that grid-based math.
Jiggly Panda 2 writes in and says 2 questions for you guys tonight, one Destiny and one travel related. I'm going to be listening to this episode on my way to New York. So I asked, what's your favorite place you've ever traveled to?
Ooh.
Man. And why was it your, well, these are separate questions. So what's your favorite place you ever traveled to, Corey?
Man. I mean, I guess Disney probably doesn't count, huh? It's got to probably be something different than Disney.
I mean, if you want that to be your answer, that's your answer.
I mean, yeah, Disney, but also outside of Disney, New York's pretty cool, man. There's a lot of great pizza there.
I need to go back as an adult. The only time I've been there, I was 14.
Yeah.
I really want to go back because I'm a big theater nut. I'd love to go to a couple Broadway shows.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to go see the Knicks play at MSG, even though I'm not a Knicks fan.
Yeah.
There's just something about like going to a sports mecca.
Yeah. We when we went, we ate at the How I Met Your Mother bar.
Interesting. Okay.
The bar that inspired McLaren's.
Yeah.
It was really good too, man. And they sell all kinds of How I Met Your Mother. Well,
I want to go to there's a pizza place that I've had recommended to me multiple times over the years. John's at Bleecker Street. That I've had recommended to me that I really want to go to. I'm a big food nut also, so there's like a ton of chefs that I follow on like Instagram and, you know, on Food Network and stuff that have restaurants in the city that I'd love to go to.
Yeah.
I'm a big museum guy, so going to the Guggenheim is really appealing to me. I don't care about things like the Empire State Building or the Statue of Liberty. Like,
yeah,
I did shit like that when I was a kid.
Yeah, we went to the Statue of Liberty. It was fine. It's
fine. Ellis Island, I think, is more interesting.
Yeah.
I'm a history nut, so like Ellis Island was fascinating to me at 14, and my whole class hated it, but I loved it.
Yeah.
We took a class trip to New York when I was in 8th grade, and it was really fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'd like to go and see some shows. Just a huge Broadway fan. I don't want to do like the normal touristy shit. I just want to like go see shows and eat for a week.
Yeah, that's fair.
If I go to New York, my favorite place I've ever been, is kind of a toss up. I really, really love Rome. I've been fortunate enough to go to Rome twice. It was beautiful both times I went. I only got to spend a day there each time, but had a blast. Did 2 completely different itineraries each time I went.
Nice.
Seeing the Sistine Chapel was, for someone who really loves art and history, and at the time was very at a certain point in my life I was very religious. It was a very, very special experience to go see that in the Vatican museums. I'm not Catholic or anything, but to see that was very, very special. The other place I would probably choose would be Scandinavia. And I'm using it as like a collective colloquial term because I loved Finland, Sweden, Denmark, and Germany all kind of like equally. That was very cool. 16-year-old Josh really loved that trip. If I could live anywhere on the planet, I would probably move to Finland or Stockholm like tomorrow. That's how much I really, really liked it. So I think I've told you guys this before. Best burger I've ever had in my life was at a 7-Eleven in Sweden. Not a joke. Not a joke at all. Yeah, I love traveling and eating. That's what I've come to figure out. I love traveling and eating. Like, I would love to be like my generation's Anthony Bourdain, but I'm a horrible cook. So I think that's part of the requirement is that you have to be a good chef to do that.
Yeah.
And I also don't have a crippling drug problem. That's fair. But for real though, like if I could just travel the world and like eat, I would. I would say domestically, my favorite place is Chicago. I love Chicago. I genuinely have thought more than once about moving to Chicago. I've brought that. I've brought that up before. I love Italian beefs. I love hot dogs. I love Chicago style pizza, both tavern and deep dish. Lots of great breweries up there. Just I love the vibe in the city. Big fan. Like if I could move anywhere, I would probably be, Chicago would be pretty high on my list right now.
Nice.
Chicago, California. My therapist once told me that I have a California mindset on a Midwest budget.
Yeah.
And that's probably the perfect way to sum me up. Jiggly Panda also asks, what's your favorite way to travel and why is it your favorite?
It's not flying.
It's not flying for Corey.
I hate flying so much.
Oh my god. My partner hates flying too. It's okay.
I just, man, I used to not mind it, in somewhere in my late 20s that switch flipped, and I was just like, flying is scary. I don't know. I like driving, to be honest. Not that I want to drive like 5 days across the country or anything, but I don't know. Not boat either, man. Not a boat.
Corey doesn't like to travel. He likes the destination. He doesn't like getting there.
I'm all about the destination. I am not about the journey, Josh. Oh man.
I used to like flying a lot more when I was younger. Now I just I find myself really nervous on planes, and this was before the issues with like Boeing planes.
Mm-hmm.
I find myself getting really anxious on planes. I don't particularly like driving. If I have to drive more than like 3 or 4 hours, I'm probably annoyed.
Mm.
The furthest I will drive from my house is like, I have a radius of like 500 miles and that's it. Which I feel like is still pretty large.
Yeah, it's still pretty.
That's about 6 hours.
Yeah.
About 5-6 hours is the absolute most I would ever drive away from home.
It's still a long time.
That allows me to get from North Texas to like Kansas. So in a big circle, there's not many places I can go that are very appealing at that point.
Yeah.
So, Galveston with the dirty ass water.
Jeez.
Louisiana, which no. Arkansas, no. Oklahoma, God, no. Or, West Texas, which is also terrible. So there's not very many options. It's like Austin and that's about it.
Austin and he says.
Austin and it's pretty bad when Kansas is like number 2 on this list.
Yeah. Jeez.
Dirty ass Galveston water. And then Jiggly Panda also asks, final question from them. We talk about Game of the Year and how DLC should be in consideration at times. So I ask this, should the Final Shape be in the Game of the Year discussion this year?
Man, that's tough.
I think it comes down to a personal preference, honestly.
Yeah. And also, like, it depends on if you want expansions to count as games of the year, too.
So my personal feeling on this is, yes, it should be in consideration, but I would also urge you to remember that most people who vote on this stuff left Destiny behind back in D1.
Yeah.
Did not play the expansions, or they played like vanilla D2, declared it was the worst thing ever, and then moved on with their lives, and think that the barrier to entry is too confusing to come back, and blah, 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 blah. It's simply, it may have good reviews now, but I think that when you look at other expansions that are going to come out this year, like Shadow of the Erd Tree, which is launching right now as we speak for Elden Ring,
which from everything I hear is
for Diablo 4 are two wildly different things and are much more mainstream.
Yeah.
It's the same reason that the Cyberpunk expansion got so much traction last year, right?
Yeah.
And I chose it as arguably my game of the year last year.
Yeah.
So
I've been hearing that Erd Tree is like basically just a new game.
Yeah,
it's a brand new game.
It's that big, and I think when you have something like that, it's really hard for Final Shape to go up against something like that. Like, yes, our community loves it. The reviews have been incredible. It's got a great meta score and everything, but like it's not going to be taken seriously is the problem.
Yeah.
So like when I do my personal game of the year, yeah, it's going to be on the list. Like it just is.
Yep.
It's going to be on the list. But by and large, from most outlets and like Jeff Keighley's Game Awards, I wouldn't expect to see it. It should absolutely be a top nominee for best ongoing game. It should win that decisively this year, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But it depends. If they count Elden Ring as an ongoing game, good luck. which
Yeah,
is entirely possible with it getting an expansion.
right. And they put Cyberpunk in it last year, so
Yeah, which didn't sit well with me either. Um, I think that ongoing games should be reserved for multiplayer and live service games, but that's just my personal preference.
I agree with you.
I mean, even then, you're going to face stiff competition because Final Fantasy 14 has an expansion coming out in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Which, we know that's top MMO on the planet right now. World of Warcraft is back with a new expansion. Like, there's a lot of games getting big updates this year, and I think for a lot of folks, I think they recognize that Final Shape really shook things up, even if they don't play Destiny anymore. But I think that it's going to be really hard to convince them for anything other than like sound and art direction that it should be taken seriously in other categories.
Right.
Unfortunately. Our final question, because Nadiki's question gets completely canceled out because of the update in the Schwab that we got. Tiger Jesus writes in, do y'all think Act 1 of the episodes are going to feel like the most like seasons? What do you want to see happen in Acts 2 and 3? We kind of addressed this earlier, but I do feel like they feel like seasons right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's clearly a storyline for each act, which I don't think is bad, but my question still remains if this content is going to stay long term. Because if it's going to stay long term, I think you have a lot of possibilities. I was talking about this with Joe Aces the other day, and I was saying that the new episode structure, you could potentially drop the dungeon for an episode, for example, partway through Act 2, or as the cap off to Act 2, or something like that. You don't have to drop it right away at the beginning of the episode. Right. You can drop it partway through, and it can still be featured for 9 to 12 weeks or something.
Right.
And I mean, it'll be featured until the next dungeon comes along, anyways. But that allows for greater flexibility in the stories told in the dungeons too. Like, you're telling me that Fickrell is going to have, like an H.P. Lovecraft-esque vampire tower? Like, hell yeah, I want to storm that in a dungeon.
That'd be awesome.
Or in a Nightfall, a bare minimum. Like, I want that. Like, I think that the episodic structure means that you can introduce things. Like, we just got a revised strike this week with Exodus Crash. I would imagine that the other one we're getting, Inverted Spire, is probably being saved for Act 2, maybe Act 3. I would imagine that's when it's going to come back. I don't think we're going to get it in Act 1. But I think that opens up more storytelling possibilities. Like, this one clearly takes place now in the time frame.
Right.
With Exodus Crash. So I like that. I enjoy it. I enjoy seeing how we can change the world around the game. I think that there has to be something, either an activity that's going to be brought in permanently. Please God, I don't want a ton of battlegrounds. But like, there's got to be something like battlegrounds, revamped strikes, a dungeon, or a raid tied to each act, I think, because then that means you're getting something new every 6 weeks. That is in permanent rotation.
Yeah.
In addition to expanding the seasonal activities out.
Yeah.
So I was actually really surprised that we got 2 variations of Breach Execution, or whatever it's called, as well as we got Enigma Protocol already, and we're 10 days in.
Yeah.
Like, that really surprises me. We know there's an exotic quest coming at some point. I believe that's not launching until Act 3. So, I mean, I'll even throw an exotic quest in there. You need to have revamped strikes, dungeon, a revised raid, or an exotic quest, I think, for each 6-week increments.
Yeah.
And if you do that, then I think that that's successful, and that is delivering content at a more brisk pace than we were getting. And I don't think that that's as tall of an order to meet, especially if the theory is correct that we're not going to get an expansion next year. You have to rely on revamping that old content.
Right. Especially if you're going to do this again for another entire year.
Right, which I think that's when you start unvaulting the old planets and bringing forth any remaining D1 content that you want to.
Right. Yeah, so I agree. Yep. What's next, Josh?
I think that's going to do it for our questions. We have lore to read tonight.
Lore corner.
It's not a big one. I need to really sit down now that I'm starting to feel a little bit better and work on some actual lore corners for us. But I wanted to read this one since I just got the gun, and I actually really like this lore piece. It's Kvostov.
Yes.
And it's from the perspective of Ghost. You don't know how long I've been looking for you. Day 1. The world is dead, but there's peace in the mortuary silence. I'm born into this dead world where dandelions grow up through layers of ash, blanketing miles of desolate road. Day 673. There is a stretch of land, a canyon through which water once flowed, a canal cut into the earth, bristling with derelict ships and countless dead. Flowers bloom in many desecrated carcasses. Each component of this world's decomposition has a purpose. Water flows, cities decay, flowers bloom, yet still I search for mine. Day 1857. Oceans are vast, lonely expanses. Though life flourishes in the depths, it's still not life that I'm looking for. I thrive on death, search for death. Perhaps my purpose lies below the water, but it's dark and lonely, and I don't want to look there yet. Not when there's so much more horizon. Day 6231. I was careless and someone shot me from all the way across a field. The bullet only chipped my shell, but it spun me around and left me shaken. I don't know who they were or even why I was targeted. I played dead and no one came for me. I laid in tall grass for 9 days. It rained on the 5th. I acquainted myself with the ants. They are survivors. Day 36,725. This world is dead, but life is threatening a return. I don't know when I'll ever fulfill my purpose, but I know what I am. I'm a ghost haunting the grave of humanity. A ghost with a calling. That's pretty depressing. I don't know about you, but yeah. By the way, this only covers the first 100 years of ghost searching for us.
Yeah. Jeez.
Only the first 100 years.
Yep. Jeez.
Yeah. And we estimate that ghosts probably spend about 1,000 years looking for us, ultimately.
Yeah.
That is wild. Like, it's implied that ghosts basically explored the Panama Canal. Which I think lends credence to the theory that the last city is somewhere in South America.
Mm-hmm.
Crossing the oceans, of course. I think the most heart-wrenching one is the second to last one that we get, which is day 6,231, where Ghost is shot from across the field and plays dead for a week and a half. Like,
Jeez.
just laying there. 17 years, and they get shot. And just play dead, pretend nobody can see you, this and that, and just like, really, that's the point that ghosts were getting to, even that early on.
Right.
So, oh man, yeah. I hope that we get a little bit more ghost lore eventually about what the search for us looked like. I think that is that's interesting, and it's a side of Ghost that we don't really get a lot.
Right.
And it's really fitting that this is on the Kvastov. I would really like it if we had gotten, like, I know we already got the reissue of the ship with New Light a couple of years ago, but I think it would have been really cool if we had gotten the ship again in some context with, like, maybe continuing the lore.
Yeah.
I can't help but think that we are going to get that at some point, but I'm not sure when.
Yeah.
All right, Corey, why don't you get us on out of here?
All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for watching and or listening to this episode of Tower Casuals, the Destiny podcast. You find new episodes every Friday on your podcast service of choice or on YouTube. Josh, thank you for your time as always. Where can we find you?
Twitter, Josh_Finn, 2 N's.
2 N's.
2 N's, people.
2 N's.
I promise that the NBA finals are over. I'm stopping screaming about the NBA for a while.
Yeah. Well, tell me that an hour and a half ago.
I was not very happy. I'm still not happy, but I'm trying to set this aside.
Oh, man. Don't worry, Josh. I get it. You can find me at I am Corey HD on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow us at Tower Casuals. Thank you, everybody, for watching and or listening. And until next time, we love you. Goodbye.